Webber 2022 states that serial killers are individuals that commit at least 3 murders with a certain interval between the kills. They can go undetected for a significant amount of time, which is pretty scary, often years, because they blend into society and appear to be respectable people within their community. They are charming, manipulative, deceitful, impulsive, they lack empathy, very intelligent, and many serial killers are married with children. So they lead double lives, and nobody suspects anything. They are very calm, very charming, very chill, able to smile and be charismatic. They have children, family. They are able to blend into society, into the community with ease. They could be your teacher, they could be a law enforcement officer, an ex-military man. It's just, the list goes on, guys, and it's quite scary, and we're going to be looking into certain cases with married killers, okay? And just as a quick note before we get into the cases, I found it fascinating that the ones I was looking into here, that male serial killers hide behind the guise of this family man, you know, they have children, and they're just looked at as really loving, kind people in their community. They're giving, they're in high profile jobs, and yet the women serial killers that I looked into, not a lot of them are married, and if they are married, they actually kill their husbands and their children at times, as well as family members, or they have their husband involved in the killings with them. And they often have very short marriages. These are the ones I've just researched. I tried to find ones to use in this video that I could use as an example of a married serial killer, and that just really fascinated me, that it's the males that actually hide within the family unit, whereas it seems that women tend to hide behind their jobs. And I noticed that the average age that most serial killers will kill is from the age of around 28, 29, and it goes into the 30s and then the 40s. So it's interesting because criminal profilers in the past have always stated that serial killers don't just start killing in their 50s. I think it's rare for their 40s as well. It kind of makes you wonder, have they done it earlier on, or have they demonstrated other disturbing behaviours such as animal cruelty, or is there other avenues or outlets where they've been able to take out their anger? You know, some will go into the military where they are allowed to kill, and they learn to kill and they learn to shoot. They learn to adopt a ritual in that. They have that strong discipline, and they are they have positive reinforcement for being able to shoot the enemy. It's very interesting to me how many law enforcement officers and those in the military have ended up being serial killers. I'm not saying that every person in the army is a serial killer, but it's just interesting that that's maybe a profession they've chosen, or their natural impulses and urges for violence and aggression is reinforced positively in an environment that encourages and rewards them for killing others. You know, it encourages them to be violent, and they will be rewarded in that way. Another common thing that I found between the serial killers, like, it was just amazing to read different articles, that so many of them go camping and hunting and fishing. I just find it so fascinating that that is a common thread between them all. Not every single one, but most of them. It was very interesting to read that the children of theirs would say, they took me camping and hunting and we'd go fishing. And another thing I noticed is very common is that their neighbours, their co-workers, their wives and their children have often stated that they're in shock. They can't believe that their father or their husband or co-worker has gone and killed. They can't believe they're a serial killer or a killer because it's just not in them. They've seen them that they're very polite. This is the words they use, often repeated, is that they're quiet and they're polite. And they are somebody who is jovial. It's quite amazing. A major factor in the serial killer being able to lead double lives is because they're able to compartmentalize. There are driving factors within them that can help neutralize guilt and shame, and they are able to put human beings into two different categories. There are those who they treat with decency, and it's usually their family members who they hide behind as a disguise. And there's also other people in the world who they don't have a connection with, who they can victimize, discard and disregard. Common traits within serial killers are that not only are they master manipulators, but they can develop in their childhood and adult lives antisocial behavior, narcissistic disorder and borderline personality disorder. And this also enables them to be able to detach from any kind of empathy. We often hear of serial killers who dehumanize their victims by targeting a particular victim profile. It's almost like they think, well, I'm doing the world a favor by ridding the world of these kinds of people. Okay, so that might be prostitutes, it could be the homeless, or in the case with the Germans who killed the Jews. So they saw them as non-human, and they were able to methodically and very cruelly and in an evil way, torture them and kill them because they didn't see them as human beings who were equal to them. Weber 2022 said that serial killers that are organized think that they are superior to others. They feel like nobody is good enough for them, and they will meticulously plan their crimes. They pay attention to detail, and they leave no evidence whatsoever, and they frequently return to the place that they committed the crime to either follow the investigation or take something from the victim, which would be called a souvenir or a trophy. Disorganized offenders may be very careless, very impulsive. They may not plan their crime. If they do, it's messy. They don't pay that much attention to detail. It might be an opportunistic, random kind of killing here. They might just use a weapon at the spur of the moment that they can find rather than taking one with them. They may have their car and their house in a mess. They might not be able to hold down steady employment or a relationship. An example of a disorganized serial killer was Jack the Ripper, and he would attack his victims and just leave them out in the open, wouldn't attempt to hide them at all. In 1985, the FBI created a profile of characteristics between organised and disorganised offenders. So what it states is that organised offenders have an average to above average intelligence. They're socially competent, so they can get out there and talk to people. They have the gift of the gab. They're very convincing and charming and persuasive. We have skilled work preferred. They have a high birth order status. Their father's work would be stable, and they're sexually competent. They have an inconsistent childhood discipline, controlled mood during the crime. There may be a use of alcohol with the crime, precipitating situational stress, living with a partner, which is very interesting because we're talking about married killers here. So their house and their car would be in good condition. They follow the crime in the news media. So they are very interested, taking notes perhaps. They may change job or leave town, but it's going to be a planned thing. They won't just suddenly up and leave impulsively, I don't think, going by this profile here. I think it would take some time for them to really plan it all out. So the organised offender can be in a long-term relationship or a marriage, and they can hold down a steady job. Some of them have been in that job for many years. We're now going to get into the cases. Thank you for listening this far. If you're still with me, that's awesome. I wanted to give some background information first of all before we jump into this stuff, so it's going to make more sense when we look into these cases right now. And comment below, guys. Tell me which ones you think are an organised or a disorganised offender. Sometimes there can actually be a mix. And sometimes when there is a mixture, it can represent, in some cases, that there's more than one offender. I've seen a lot of debates over the true crime community through different forums about whether the wives of these serial killers ever knew, okay? Did they ever know? Did they ever suspect it? Or were they completely in the dark? Were these serial killer men, these husbands, so cunning that they were actually able to fool everybody, including their own wives, including their own families, their parents, everybody? It appears so, guys. It appears so. Now, as we know with the Delphi murders that a lot of us have been looking at recently, is that there has actually been footage, okay, of this man. There has been video footage. You hear his voice. Whereas the other killers, there's just sketches made of them. Some of them don't even have anything. They're just clues that they leave behind that the police have no idea what it's about. Some leave signatures. So it's just interesting to me to debate this with you guys as to Richard Allen, who we're going to also look into, his wife Kathy. Now, I don't want to accuse her. We're not going to be coming after her like crazy hyenas, okay? We don't need to be doing that stuff. But it is interesting to wonder, okay? It's natural to wonder why somebody wouldn't recognize their husband in video footage or their voice. And it could be something as simple as being in denial. It could be something as simple as just not recognizing him. When we look at it, his workmates didn't recognize him, and they're with him all the time as well. So it's very strange. So we're going to look into that as well a bit more. Kathy Allen was married to Richard Allen. I've been told that they were very young when they met or got married. They have a 28-year-old daughter, and he was a pharmacy technician. He got his license in 2018. Before that, he was working at Walmart. It's unknown if he is a serial killer. He was 44 years of age at the time of the murders in 2017. And if we're going by the other cases here where there's serial killers, some of them have actually been around the age of 45, 46, which is interesting. So Abby and Libby could be Richard Allen's first victims. It's interesting how the crime scene was left. The bodies were posed and staged. The crime scene was staged, and a souvenir was taken from the scene. One news source states that Richard Allen was able to pull off a picture of normality, going on trips and out to play pool with his wife. A pub owner at the local tavern that Richard would regularly attend stated that Richard would go in there and they would always talk about the girls and everything. He says, we would carry on conversations about it. He would say, you know, it's such a tragedy. And we'd say we felt sorry for the families and all that, but we tried not to talk about it too much because we all knew the families and were friends with the families. Now, I find that freaking weird and interesting at the same time because I have been following the Delphi case for a long time, as well as many other web sleuths and true crime podcasters, etc., on YouTube, everywhere. And this is the first time I've heard somebody say, who knows Richard Allen very well, has said that we all knew the families, meaning Abby and Libby's families? Is there something I'm missing here? So did Richard Allen actually know Abby and Libby's families on a personal level? It may or may not be, I don't know. It's just strange how that pub owner has said that.
I'm just surprised he lives so close.
Everything's so shocking. Josh and Carrie Rogers drove by the home of Richard Allen, the man police charged with 2 counts of murder in the deaths of Abby Williams and Libby German.
It's the regular neighborhood, you know, a court, you know, and I'm thinking, wow, this is crazy.
Scary things in your own backyard. Allen's backyard is about 2 miles from the Monon High Bridge Trail, where Abby and Libby's bodies were found. Police released his mugshot, but these are Facebook photos of Richard Allen. He's a husband and a father.
Lynn Rand used to live in Delphi and has been following the case closely. He's one of the many people stopping by Allen's neighborhood.
Sickening. And then the fact to find out that he's living here and has lived here since, I think they said, like 2006, is just insane. And nobody knew. like everybody described him as a nice guy.
His name is unknown to people who follow the Delphi case. That is, until now.
Here comes a guy that has never, ever been announced. He was nobody's radar. It was like, where did this guy come from?
Schechter 2012 says serial killers can actually manage to remain contentedly married to women who never suspect that their husbands are anything other than ordinary, if slightly eccentric, individuals. John Wayne Gacy married twice. He married his first wife Marlyn in 1964. They were divorced in 1969. Then he married his second wife Carol in 1972, and they were divorced in 1976. He started killing at the age of 36 in 1972. One news source states that Gacy remained on good terms with Carol after their divorce. They continued to remain friends, and he would spend hours confiding to her about his bisexuality. Gacy's first wife Marlyn stated after she'd learned about the murders that she was absolutely shocked. She just couldn't believe it. She had never had any fear of him, and that it was hard for her to relate the killings to him because she was never afraid of him. John Wayne Gacy was a shoe store manager, a Kentucky Fried Chicken manager, which was his father-in-law's franchises. And the creepy part, which could also be seen as the eccentric part of him, I guess, from an outsider's point of view, is that he was a birthday party clown. So he was known as the Killer Clown, which is pretty creepy. He was convicted of murdering over 30 teenage boys and young men between 1972 and 1978. Russell Williams was in the Canadian Armed Forces between 1987 to 2010. Mamma Mia 2018 described Russell Williams as being a decorated military pilot who had flown VIPs including the Queen and Prince Philip all over the world. He was an English-born pilot, was a commander of Canada's largest airbase, described as a shining bright star, but he had a very dark side and a dark double life. So in 2007, his offending began. He would break into the homes of women and girls near his home in Ottawa and cottage in Tweed, Ontario. He would steal their underwear and photograph himself wearing them. His crimes escalated to sexual assault, and then in November 2009, he broke into the home of a female corporal who was under his command at Canadian Forces Base Trenton, and he brutally murdered her and recorded his actions on video and with photographs. So he has taken souvenirs from this crime. And just 2 months later, he killed another woman in a similarly brutal fashion. So it's interesting to me that between, in 2009, he's killed 2 women. So it makes you wonder, were there other victims? Why were there 2 women? I know we're talking about serial killers, and as Weber stated, that serial killers are individuals who commit at least 3 murders with breaks in between. So I'm wondering, has he killed others before? I would not be surprised if he has. So while he was committing these crimes, he was married to Mary. They had married in 1991 and divorced in 2014, so 4 years later after he had actually committed his last crime. Russell was 46 when he killed his first victim. It could be fair to say that Mary had no idea whatsoever that a husband she had loved for 19 years and had looked up to and doted on was a killer. However, one of Russell's victims, who was essayed by him, claims that Mary had knowledge and failed to report it to the police. I don't know why she thinks that, but for some reason she's come out with that claim. It may or may not be fact. We don't really know. We don't really know the truth. But he seems to have been a very calculating, very manipulative person who fooled pretty much everybody. He was in a very powerful position in his job, and he never had a criminal record prior to those crimes that he's been arrested for. Dennis Rader. You wouldn't know looking at him that he's a serial killer. He was in the Air Force. He studied for a Bachelor in Admin of Justice. So he worked in security systems installing alarms, and then he worked for the IGA meat department. But he was married, he had a family. He married Paula in 1971. They divorced in 2005 when he was arrested. He started killing at the age of 29, and he had 10 victims between 1974 and 1991. His wife could not believe that somebody who was also a church council president, as well as a father, her husband, her loving husband, could do this to all of those victims. So a lot of you will recognise him to be the BTK killer, which means bind, torture, kill. So yes, he would tie his victims up, he would torture them, take photos, kill them, take photos, souvenirs. Then he'd come home and be a loving father, a doting father and husband, take his children fishing, and he was very involved with his son's Cub Scouts. He was the leader. In 1973, 20-year-old Sharon met her future husband, a Vietnam veteran and former Navy officer who was studying criminal justice. He was Joseph D'Angelo, otherwise known as the Golden State Killer. Sharon and Joseph had 3 children and divorced in 2018 at the time of his arrest. Joseph started killing at the age of 33. He had 13 victims between 1978 and 1986. He served as a police officer in California from 1976 till 1979. He also went on to be a mechanic and worked at a grocery chain in 1989. He was able to hold that job for 27 years. A co-worker at the grocery store said none of his actions in the workplace would have led us to suspect any connection to crimes being attributed to him. And why would they suspect anything? By all accounts, he was a trustworthy and reliable man. He'd been awarded numerous medals for his 22-month service in Vietnam, where he was educated and respected as an authority figure. Upon finding out what her husband was really doing all of those years, Sharon had stated that Joseph had lied to her throughout their marriage, making up excuses as to why he needed to be out at night. She told the Daily Mail that she now lives with trust issues and severe PTSD, and that she will never be the same person, since she now has the knowledge of his brutal crimes. Robert Lee Yates was 36 years of age when he started killing. He had between 16 to 18 murder victims between 1975 and 1998. Yates started his career as a corrections officer. He then enlisted with the US Army in 1975, where he became a pilot, and he earned several military awards and medals during his 19 years there. He had married his first wife, Shirley, in 1972. They divorced 2 years later. He then married his second wife, Linda, in 1974, and they had 5 children together. Robert Lee Yates appeared to be a doting father who enjoyed fishing and camping trips. He was a lover of the outdoors, and he would go hunting. Little did Linda know that just meters from the couple's bedroom window, there was a 43-year-old woman who was buried there because he wanted to see her every day. This is the creepy part, that Linda was planting flowers above the spot and she had no idea. She says when you're so close to somebody, you don't see it. She had always wondered why he put on cologne before going on hunting trips. And she had no idea what his hunting meant, did she? That he's a predator actually hunting young women. Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer, murdered 48 female victims between 1982 and 1998. He started killing at the age of 33. He married 3 times. He married his first wife, Claudia, in 1970 and divorced in 1972. He married his second wife, Marcia, in 1973 to 1981, who I'm pretty sure he fathered a child with. And his third wife, Judith, was in 1988 to 2002. He started killing whilst he was still with Marcia, his second wife, and all throughout his third marriage with Judith. Gary's adult son, Matthew, recalls his father as being a calm person who rarely yelled, and he would take him on camping trips, he'd play baseball with him, and he would go to his school concerts and sporting events as well. So he appears to be the typical family guy, the doting father, the loving husband, who has the home and family and pets and smiling and everyone's happy. Peter Tobin, a Scottish serial killer, started killing at the age of 45. In 1991 to 2006, he killed 3 victims. His last victim's remains were found under the floorboards of a church in Glasgow that he worked at as a handyman. The remains of his 2 other victims were found buried in the backyard of a property he had lived in 1991. Tobin had 3 marriages, very short marriages actually. His first wife he married in 1969 till 1971. His second wife, Sylvia, he married in 1973 till 1976. His third wife, Kathy, he married in 1989 till 1993. He had 2 children. After Kathy learned of Tobin's death, she stated that she was relieved. She says everyone knows there were more victims. She describes him as a monster and had stated that he enjoyed having power and control in their marriage and treated her like a slave. Tobin was very abusive and cruel in his marriages. He would threaten his wives with violence if they tried to leave the marriage. Now, this is so different to the other serial killers that we've heard about here who have been quite doting to their family and wives. Australian secret lovers Russell Hill and Carol Clay headed out camping in Woonongata Valley in March 2020. They'd only just set up for the night when the next day they were nowhere to be found. Campers had come across their campground, which was burnt out. For a whole year, police were trying to find out where this elderly couple had gone to. There were no signs of them whatsoever. Police were able to obtain CCTV footage of a Nissan patrol with a trailer leaving the area around the time that Russell and Carol were at those campgrounds. Carol and Russell's bodies were actually in that trailer, in their own sleeping bags that were missing from the campsite. Police were looking into leads regarding illegal hunters around the area that may have accidentally or purposefully killed Russell and Carol. But as it turns out, it was a family guy, a husband and a father that was camping right near them that actually ended their lives. Over a year later from when the couple went missing, in November 2021, 55-year-old Greg Lynn was arrested. He was 54 at the time of the murders. Greg was a Jetstar pilot, of all things, a Jetstar pilot, for 5 years. He is still married to his second wife, Melanie. They have a teenage son together. I don't know how long they've been married, but it's been a fair while. I think their teenager might be anywhere between 14 and 17, so it sounds like they've been together for over 15 years. His first wife actually died in 1999. She had actually been found deceased in a fetal position in her front garden. It was stated that she had an alcohol and drug overdose, so she had sleeping tablets or something like that in her system. I don't know if he's had anything to do with that, but who knows. Within days of his arrest, Greg had actually revealed the location of where Carol and Russell Clay's bodies were. It has been said that apparently there was an argument between Russell Hill and Greg Lynn, and he had actually shot them, possibly while they were already sleeping in their sleeping bags, because their sleeping bags were also removed. He has then gone and driven them to Dargo and in remote bushland, has burnt them and buried them under a fallen tree.
Let's go now to the Caroline Springs Street, where neighbours of Greg Lynn have been left shocked by the arrest. As Sarah Jones reports, one local says the four-wheel drive was painted around 12 months ago.
Residents in this Caroline Springs neighbourhood say it's usually quiet and were shocked to hear their neighbour Greg Lynn had been arrested in connection to the disappearance of Russell Hill and Carol Clay.
He seemed to be very nice.
John Valor says he noticed Mr Lynn's now seized four-wheel drive had been spray painted from blue to a sandy brown colour about 12 months ago.
It was in need of a spray paint because the paint was all faded, but I didn't take much notice when he sprayed it.
Here's a picture of Mr Lynn's residence and his Nissan Patrol. In 2014 it was white, in 2019 it was blue, and in 2020 it was beige. So after killing Russell and Carol, he's gone and repainted his Nissan and he's sold his trailer that they were in. I'm wondering, is this a serial killer? We are talking about serial killers. We could say that it was a crime of passion. Could be his first kills. But if he has gone back to the campsite and killed them while they were in their sleeping bags sleeping, that's premeditated. He has changed his Nissan Patrol colour 3 times. in the space of 6 years. I'm just wondering, are there more victims? His neighbours are shocked. They believe that Greg and his wife were living an idealistic lifestyle that would make ordinary Australians green with envy. She said that they would talk in the backyard. They never got into any fights. They're lovely and they always talk to each other nicely. They're very close, and him and his wife would go camping and they love camping. Interesting that camping keeps coming up.
Another neighbour, Amin, who lives down the road, said he knew Mr. Lynn to be a family person. Their kids go to the same school.
Oh, I was shocked. We don't really see him much, so he just like, in and out.
No one has come or gone from the property so far today.
So it's November 2022 as I'm recording this, and he was arrested in November 2021. So he still has a case against him. He will be going to trial in January in 2023 to test against the evidence. So his wife has appeared with their son also via video link at the hearings. An article had actually stated that he had smiled over at his son and wife. So I don't know if she's in denial, if she's just sitting there finding out what's going on. I don't know. It's strange. He is the one that talked to the investigators and told them where to find the bodies. Also, the fact that they were shot. It's evident that he had actually shot them, unless he's trying to say someone else did. I don't know. But it's just interesting to me that she's still supporting him. It seems like she's still supporting him by attending the hearings, which is interesting. Sometimes their wives will stand by them, and it may be that once he's arrested and put behind bars, that it really sinks in for her, or she may just never want to really believe that he's guilty of this crime. There are wives who are in absolute denial about their husband's crimes. They cannot believe that someone they've been married to for so long could be capable of doing something so horrendous. After learning that her husband of 28 years, a Russian ex-policeman, had confessed to brutally murdering up to 80 people, his wife Elena believes he is innocent. She says she still loves him and she would be by his side if he was released right now. She said that if she had have suspected anything was wrong, she would have divorced him. Another wife who supported her killer husband was Andrei Chikatila's wife. He was a Russian serial killer who murdered up to 56 boys, girls and women after being tracked down by his psychiatrist Alexander in 1990. Even though Fayen appeared to support her husband right to the end, she even provided him with an alibi over the death of a 9-year-old girl he had actually confessed to. And he was a cannibal as well. He ate his victims, including young children. Yet his wife had no idea. She was married to him for 30 years. She was gobsmacked at the evidence they presented her with. And she told them that sometimes he'd spend a lot of nights away from home. She had scrubbed his blood-stained clothes. I mean, you'd be asking questions, you would think, like, where has this blood come from? Maybe he also camped and hunted. I don't know about it, but he may have told her that that's where the blood came from. Sounds like she may have been in some denial. I found a female serial killer who was married. Marie No was convicted in 1999 for murdering 8 of her children between 1949 and 1968. Marie had confessed to smothering her children, who were between the ages of 13 days to 14 months old when they died, over that 19-year period. Her husband of 50 years, Arthur No, had stated he couldn't believe that she could kill 8 of their children. He said she couldn't hurt a fly. I know my wife didn't do anything to them, he said. If she had done something, I would have turned her in myself. Those were my kids too. So in conclusion, we can see that serial killers have the ability to fool everybody around them, including their own spouse, including their own children, their own neighbours, their own co-workers, their own parents, etc., etc., etc. They are cunning, they are manipulative, they hide their crimes extremely well. They are able to just smile and get away with it, show no empathy to their victims, and play the happy family, or put on the face of a happy family man or woman, as we have seen with Arthur and Marie. It's really sad for those who had no idea. For the families to suddenly to be blindsided, to be completely oblivious to their loved ones' brutal and horrendous acts, their crimes, where there's been many years that they have invested their life into this person, have actually had children with this person. And it would be a huge shock. And I would love to know, I would really love to know, out of all of the people we've looked at today with their cases, did the wives ever suspect anything? Were they ever suspicious? Did they ever suspect that their partner is out there killing somebody? You know, we look at Richard Allen, who was in Delphi, and his wife Kathy. Everybody's saying she should have known. There was video footage, there was a voice as well recorded by one of the victims, and people are saying she should have known. It's just interesting that his co-workers didn't know. You know, the people at his pool club never said anything as far as we know. We don't know if anyone's given a tip into the police. We don't know if his wife did, but it's just very interesting that he's got a son-in-law, a daughter, a wife, he's got parents, he's got co-workers. He's been in and out, hiding in plain sight, just like all these serial killers were. Hiding in plain sight, just living life like normal, just being your neighbour, being your teacher, being a military man or a cop. You know, it's crazy how many people there are, how many serial killers there are in high-profile positions as well. And it's interesting, they all seem to share the same thing of camping, hunting, fishing. They may be in the military or in the Navy or the Air Force, or be a cop or work in a supermarket. Sometimes I think I've heard that they've been truck drivers, things like that, or factory workers. But it's just so interesting, some of the similarities here within the profiles of the people we've looked at here. What are your thoughts on this, guys? You know, are they organised or disorganised offenders? I am sure there are still so many serial killers going undetected right now as we speak. And they too would be hiding in plain sight, living very normal kind of lives, and no one around them would be suspecting them. So I too, just like Richard Allen, am a member of an 8-ball association pool club. I've been going to my pool nights, and it's just so weird, because even though I don't look at everyone as a serial killer, it's just so weird since learning this knowledge about Richard Allen that I look around at the people around me and think, geez, could they be a Richard Allen? You know, you kind of wonder, and you think, these people appear normal. What if they had a dark secret? It's not like I'm suspicious of everybody. You know, I don't want to be like that around my club members or the opposition, you know, other members that come in from other teams, but you just don't ever know, as this proves it. Nobody knew Richard Allen, one of their members, team members, was a killer. It's just creepy. There's many young people that go missing along the coast of Australia here near Byron Bay. It's just so weird how many people, young ones, go missing around the same age, and people have wondered if there's a serial killer around there. I would not be surprised from what we've learned today, guys. I'd love to know what you think about this video. Thank you for watching. I love conversing with you guys and listening to your ideas about all of this stuff. It's very fascinating to get into the minds, or try to get into the minds of these criminals. But yeah, I just wanted to do a video on how the wives, you know, the perspective of their wives, or the husbands that we saw with Arthur and Marie. You want to see what their perspective is. Do they know? Do they not know? Are they shocked, you know, to find out that many years, like 50 years of marriage for some of them, suddenly found out that, oh my God, I don't know you at all. It's quite scary, guys. It's quite scary. Anyway, I'm going to close this down now, guys, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. Love and blessings, guys.